I have a little buddy with me today. Oh, big yawn. He's been all snoozing in my lap. He's going to have to get off now so I can talk. Although I guess he doesn't have to. He can just sit here with me, I suppose. This is the little dude we're pet sitting today. Oh, the cocky's talking now too. Thanks, cockadoo-doodle-doo. Yeah, the people across the road, they have a pet cockatoo. He must be out in the sun today. They have him out in the back in the cage, and then they have a little trouble when they stick out the front. And of course now he decides to squawk on now that I'm trying to do a video. But them's a break sometimes. Okay. You want to hop down? Okay. You in bed? You want to stay there? Okay. Yeah, he's curled up on the couch next to me. Hi. No, you want to come back? Okay. Oh, you want to come back? Am I nice and warm? Huh? Is that better? Okay. Anyway, I'm at my mum and dad's house today, pet sitting, as I said yesterday. We've been out for a big walk this morning. He's a little bit pooped. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about today is some of the books that have helped me through the last 30 odd years of being overweight. The first one I remember getting, I'm sure everyone in America knows this, was the Susan Powter books, Stop the Insanity, and her book that had recipes. I think it was called Food. I also did her aerobics, a lot of her aerobics tapes. I really love doing those. The strength, I like the combination of the strength training and the aerobic training in the one routine. But over time, her diet philosophy didn't really fit me. I couldn't keep up the low-fat eating and the high carbohydrate eating. It was just too restrictive, and it wasn't satisfying. But a lot of people figured out over time you need fat to feel satisfied. Plenty of other people can eat like that, but I'm not one of them. Then the next book I got was this one, When Women Stop Hating Their Bodies. And it's when I was first really, and their other book, Overcoming Overeating. That's when I was first venturing in to the non-diet way of looking at food and weight loss. And that was really helpful, actually. It made me realise that a lot of the scripts in my head were actually internalized misogyny, and also just examples other people in society around me had set. Especially growing up in the 80s, being a teenager in the 80s, it was just thin, cocaine culture, thin, supermodel thin. And as someone who comes from a line of overeaters, and generations back there's been alcohol problems, and so I was already primed to self-soothe with food through that addiction gene. So yeah, I realised one of the reasons, after all the trauma I had when I was a late teen, I'm not going to go into that, that's personal stuff. I put on like 30 kilos in 1 year. And that's a lot of weight to gain in 1 year. But back then, psychology really wasn't a thing here. I mean, it was here, but it was more for people who could afford to do it. It wasn't commonplace like it is now. It was expensive. It was mainly for people who had actual serious mental health issues. And my parents at the time definitely couldn't have afforded psychology. And once I was a young adult, I definitely couldn't afford it on my own. Certainly not on apprentice wages. So by the time I got to the size I was when I bought this book, I hated my body. I hated everything about it. I remember I was always more buxom than my friends. especially my sporting peers. They were a lot leaner, smaller chested, thinner hipped. I was quite buxom. I mean, looking back now, I wish I was as fat as I thought I was then. But my body, I didn't understand about body types, didn't know anything about body types, how it was different, how genetics and muscle mass and all that sort of stuff played into how a body looks. So that book was a real eye-opener for me to realise that I didn't have to diet, or I could diet in a way that was gentle and kind and about healing the whole person instead of being just a number on a scale. And then that way made me realise I needed therapy. And eventually I met my husband and got married and moved overseas to America, and that opened up another whole can of worms, because living in Los Angeles with undiagnosed MS, I was exercising and wondering why I felt weird often, a lot of the time. But we couldn't figure out what it was. Of course, I was just overhot and overdoing everything. Being in my own space and doing my own thing was so freeing and so nice. I carried on the healthy stuff I'd learned from my mum and the weight loss clubs here, but then I also was missing the companionship, and the loneliness and the comfort eating kicked in. My job didn't translate, because if I did my job with the job hubby had, we just wouldn't have seen each other. I would have done a lot of weekend work. He was working all hours of the day during the week, so we just wouldn't have seen each other. So I tried some work from home stuff, but never really got anywhere with that. So over time, I became more and more isolated, more and more dependent on food to feel good. Oh, you're having a scratch? Okay. So I wanted to, again, figure out why I was eating the way I was eating, why I would emotionally eat all the time. So I'd seen a psychologist for a little while, and she'd helped me through a whole lot of stuff, dealing with moving to a foreign country, newly married, again, not knowing all the things we didn't know. I just thought I had migraines and things, dealing with that, wondering why when we went out clubbing or different places, I feel exhausted, and then we'd have to come home, so that was awful too, and I felt depressed because I couldn't go anywhere. So I thought I'd give intuitive eating a go, figure out how I ate, what I needed to eat, what my body wanted, rather than following some diet from some book that didn't know me, didn't know my needs, didn't know my body. So then I went with this book. This was amazing, this book for me. That's the one I mentioned when I was having the chocolate sultanas, and that really got me down to learn how to feed my body, how it wanted to be fed. But again, didn't know I had PMDD, didn't know I had MS. So I couldn't stick to the intuitive eating. Again, there was more deep-seated diet stuff back in there I didn't realise until I moved back here. Because even though I was doing intuitive eating, I was still doing it, looking at it as a diet, and that I had to do it perfectly, and that if I messed up, it was bad, and I was hopeless and couldn't stick to anything. And wow, that cocky's really going off today. Sorry about that, but once he starts going, he's going. But I want to get these thoughts out while I can. Oh, he's put himself back to bed. Okay, fair enough. Yes, intuitive eating. Because I didn't know I had PMDD twice a month, my intuitive eating would just turned into binge eating, and I didn't understand why. I felt so helpless, so useless, so bad, I guess was the word I felt at the time, because I couldn't control it. I couldn't, no matter what I did, it always reverted back to the binge eating, the emotional binge eating. And slowly over time, friends moved away through divorce or marriage or job changes, and we moved a couple of different times. And all of a sudden, the support network wasn't there. There was no other support network. And then we had our daughter, and that was a very traumatic birth. She was also premature. I almost died. You know it's bad when your gynecologist tells you you did your best to die on the table. So that was not good. And then not long after that, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, then MS, and then we talked about it some more. And the last lot of friends that we had locally, they moved back to Colorado, I think it was. And hubby's job changed, and we lost that their last sense of stability. And we talked it through, especially once I was diagnosed with MS, and we said, oh, can't stay here. Daughter was already showing signs of being really smart, and we had a good income, but in LA, you've got to have an astronomical income to live anywhere where the school system actually has a chance of being halfway decent, and we certainly weren't in any of those areas. So we didn't want to put daughter through that, and I was struggling. I was really struggling. And hubby had undiagnosed ADHD as well, so it was all just a mess. So we upped sticks and moved back here to Australia, which was hard for him because he had to retrain completely. And when we got back here, I pretty much had a meltdown, mental breakdown. I was sleeping all the time because I finally felt safe and secure, and so I was sick of earthquakes, sick of LA basically. And the distance, I was Skyping with my parents, 8 hours a day. Sometimes when they had their days off, they were still working at the time. They're retired now, so they can off gallivant like they're doing. But my eating was out of control. And we stayed here with my parents for about 8 years. And in that time, we were also help my mum and dad care for my grandmother, who was high-level care. So that was another stress for everybody involved. Hubby retrained. Daughter was going through school. I was trying to retrain as well. Got a few qualifications, but again, every time I tried to get a job or got a job or did a trial, my MS would flare up, and that was that. And then I was getting fatter and fatter and fatter because I was depressed and more stressed. And I saw a health psychologist, and she helped me sort out a lot of stuff. Like I had a strong belief in the just world theory, where because of what you see in movies and books and things, the good guys always win and the bad guys always get the just desserts. But in the real world, that doesn't always happen. The world doesn't really care in the sense of justness. It just happens. I had to learn that there isn't a just. I think sometimes bad things happen to good people, and sometimes good things happen to bad people. It's just the way the world is. And that was a huge thing to get over for me. So it was about this time I was at my heaviest, of 122 kilos. And then eventually we moved out of my parents' house. Finally had enough money to do that. Back into renting, of course, which sucks. But we can't afford our own house. Certainly not on one wage. And I'm disabled, but not disabled enough to get any disability allowance. So that sucks too. And it's been good because I can stay home with our daughter and help her do stuff, and it was really came in handy in the pandemic because I could stay home and homeschool her. But eventually, as I said, I've been working through my stuff, and there's a book I bought a couple of months ago that I felt like I needed something more, like to rehash what I've been doing. I felt like I was stuck. I couldn't get below 100 kilos for whatever reason. I had a mental block that I was stuck. And I think it was definitely to do with past trauma stuff that I've been working through as well, again on my own. But it was definitely a definite mental block with 100 kilos. And I started reading this a couple of months ago. And I'm slowly working my way through it bit by bit so I can actually digest what it says. I used to just blaze through it and try and absorb it all at once. I'll get to the end to say I'd progressed and graduated from the book, I guess. So I knew what I was doing. But this time, again, like with my weight loss, I'm taking it slowly. I mean, I've literally only read this much so far, and for me, I'm a fast reader, so that tells you that I'm actually slowing down. I'm even taking the time to highlight things that I think would be good for me to look back on. So yeah, that's where I am at the moment. It's definitely a mental game, hormonal game. People who say weight loss is easy don't really know what they're talking about. I mean, maybe for them it was easy. Or maybe they mean that it's simple, but it's not easy. Because eating less, moving more, yes, that is the sum game of how you do it. But motivations and desires and hunger cues and all sorts of emotional and mental stuff goes into why we're eating. Just isn't a fuel in, fuel out equation, like they say with the food in, food out, exercise more, calories in, calories out equation that they try and tell you on all these influencer sites and diet books. And it's a $1 billion industry. They're making money. If it worked, it wouldn't be such a big industry. It wouldn't be so many billions of dollars that they earn. Because you'd go on a diet and it'd be done. You wouldn't have to do it again and again and again and again. I wish psychology and mental health was embraced as much as the diet industry was. That it was as easy to go and get therapy as it was to go and pick up a diet book or shakes or join a weight loss club, But it's not. There's still so much stigma around mental health. It's kind of saying, I digressed. Where was I? Yeah, it's not simple. It's not. There's so many different ways that we eat and why we eat. So much emotion tied up with food. I've studied my daughter and my husband over the years. Neither of them have an eating problem. My daughter, because we've taught her intuitive eating the whole time since she was born. She wanted ice cream for dessert. She got ice cream for breakfast. She got ice cream for breakfast because we knew that she would eat fruit and vegetables later in the day. There was no good or bad foods. There was no moral judgment around any foods at all. And ironically, out of all of her classmates, she was the one that had vegetables in her lunch every day. She'd have chips too, or a biscuit, or muffins, or sweet things, but she would ask for vegetables first before she'd ask for anything. So for her, it definitely worked. Which ended up being ironic because she now has a lot of intolerances and things, and a lot of her favourite foods she's actually not intolerant to. But again, you don't know what you don't know, But watching them eat, hubby has ADHD, so he's on medication. It does increase his need for sugar to help with his chemical imbalance in his brain and all that sort of stuff. But even his appetite, even when he forgets to eat, if he forgets to eat, he'll eat a bigger portion. If he eats regularly, he eats smaller portions across the day. Daughter's the same. There are days where she's hungry, really hungry, and she'll eat an absolute crap ton of food. Another day she's like, not that hungry today, Mum. I just want a little snack. Some days she wants a little bowl of cereal for dinner. Some days, like for breakfast this morning, she wanted a meal. She had meatballs and something else, and no, that was yesterday. Yesterday was meatballs and rice and some fruit and some veggies. She wanted a dinner meal for breakfast. She woke up absolutely starving. And then sometimes at night she's hungry at midnight, just before bed. She's like, oh, I'm hungry, I need something to be able to go sleep. Hubby's the same. So when I would have those cravings, it taught me that it's okay. When you're hungry, you're hungry. But I had to learn how to tune in with those physical cues again, especially coupled with the hormonal swings in my cycle, because that hunger, as I've said in the last couple of videos, it's voracious. It's not a typical hunger. So then learning my regular hunger cues is difficult sometimes because it's not so sharp and urgent as the hormonal hunger. So sometimes I've had to learn that sometimes hunger can mean I feel yuck, I feel lethargic, or I have a headache, or it's not always stomach hunger, or I feel heavy, or lightheaded. And even though I'd done intuitive eating, I'd done all that other stuff in years past, I hadn't really given myself full permission to eat what I needed, because I was always mindful of the rest of the month of trying to eat good or eat healthier to compensate for later in the month when I would eat driven by my hormones. So that was an inbuilt restrict binge cycle without me meaning to do that. So I've learned to, once the hormones switch off, I just switch back to my normal eating. I don't overly restrict, I don't cut down. And my body just kind of goes back to normal. That's what one of the things I've been reading in this book, actually. Because when you go off and have Christmas dinner, or you go away for a holiday or something, a holiday for a week or so, you might put on a little bit of weight, a bit of mass for extra eating and sitting around if you're not doing anything athletic. But when you go home, you just get back to your normal eating and your weight readjusts to what your normal weight was. So that sort of helped solidify that thinking in my brain. And that's what allowed me to eat differently. I even discovered something today on my laptop that was from 10 years ago. And I'd written down what I was currently eating for my PMS. I thought it was PMS at the time. What my eating was then compared to before. And I look back on it now and I'm like, wow, that was progress. But wow, I've made even more progress now. I just don't eat the foods that I did then. Or if I do, it's in different proportion to what it used to be. I'll have to look that up and show you guys another day again. That was fascinating for me. And also for me to have a record of how I was then, how I am now. Maybe in the future I might even eat differently again. So yeah, that's kind of where I want to leave that, I think. Got some soup cooking, I think it's nearly done. That's for my lunchtime meal prep for this week. I really have been in the mood for soup and sandwiches. So that'll be nice. Oh, sorry, I got a bit dry. Looks like Cocky's finally stopped yabbing on, so maybe that's my cue to stop here. Thanks for listening if you did. If not, oh well, this is for me, so it'll help me figure out where I'm going and what I want to do from here on. Okay, see you next time. Bye.